What if I told you that for a brief, violent moment, the Caribbean wasn't ruled by kings or crowns, but by pirates? What if men with no flag, no homeland, and no master forged their own republics, where stolen gold bought loyalty and cannon fire enforced law? Could outlaws really become rulers? Could thieves shape empires? Welcome to Hidden in History, where shadows still speak. Today, we dive into one of the strangest experiments in power the world has ever seen: the pirate republics of the Caribbean, and how they became political players feared by empires. Don't forget to subscribe, because in the world of history's secrets, the best tales are always hidden just beneath the surface. The Caribbean of the 1600s and early 1700s was a powder keg. Spain claimed the entire ocean as its private highway, funneling silver and gold from Mexico and Peru back to Europe. The Spanish crown was rich in treasure, but poor in patrols. Its empire stretched too wide, its galleons too heavy, its convoys too predictable. And in those gaps, like sharks drawn to blood, came the pirates. At first, they weren't pirates at all. They were privateers, licensed raiders armed with letters of marque from kings and queens, legal predators against Spain's monopoly. But war always ends, and with peace came unemployment. Thousands of hardened sailors, men who knew only the taste of gunpowder and the creak of rigging, were suddenly left with no pay, no country, and no orders. Their solution? Keep raiding, but now for themselves. And so, the first pirate havens were born. Tortuga, off the coast of Hispaniola, became a laboratory for lawless society in the mid-1600s. Here, French flibustiers, English adventurers, and Dutch wanderers formed the infamous Brethren of the Coast. They made their own rules, articles, written codes dividing plunder, setting punishments, and guaranteeing every man a vote. It was rough democracy, born in the smoke of cannon fire and sealed with rum. Not far away, Jamaica's Port Royal became another hub. The English crown tolerated, sometimes even encouraged, its pirates, as long as they attacked Spanish ships. For a time, Port Royal was called the wickedest city on earth, a place where treasure was auctioned openly, taverns overflowed with plunder, and men like Henry Morgan built fortunes raiding Spanish strongholds. It was piracy as policy, chaos disguised as strategy. But the true experiment in pirate nationhood came later, in Nassau. After the War of the Spanish Succession ended in 1714, Europe's great powers signed treaties and stood down their navies. Thousands of privateers suddenly found themselves ashore, out of work, and unwilling to go quietly back to poverty. Where would they go? To the Bahamas, specifically New Providence Island. Nassau had everything an outlaw capital needed: shallow waters that kept warships away, markets eager for cheap plunder, and isolation from the prying eyes of London. And in 1715, fate smiled, or sneered, on the pirates. A Spanish treasure fleet wrecked off the coast of Florida, scattering silver and gold across the seafloor. Pirates swarmed, salvaging the riches, and Nassau became their stronghold. Here they called themselves free men. Captains were chosen by vote, quartermasters enforced the will of the crew, and councils decided on raids like parliaments at sea. Ships became floating republics. On land, Nassau turned into a functioning society. Pirates taxed trade, demanded fees for protection, and cut deals with local merchants who wanted cheap goods without paying imperial tariffs. In effect, they ran their own state, an outlaw state, but a state nonetheless. And make no mistake, they wielded power. Merchant ships often preferred to pay pirates for safe passage rather than risk destruction. Local planters tolerated them because pirates kept rival nations at bay. Governors, desperate for settlers and supplies, quietly cut bargains. Even empires bent, turning a blind eye as long as their enemies suffered more. But unity among thieves is fragile. Some, like Benjamin Hornigold, refused to attack English ships, hoping to stay in London's good graces. Others, like Charles Vane, saw that as betrayal. Vane declared war on everyone, English, Spanish, or French. Then came the legends. Blackbeard, with his burning fuses and terror tactics. Calico Jack Rackham, with his flamboyant flag. And Bonny and Mary Read, who broke every mold of gender and expectation. Nassau was a theater, and the world could not look away. But empires do not tolerate rivals forever. In 1718, Britain sent Governor Woodes Rogers with an armada, armed not only with cannon, but with something deadlier: royal pardons. Pirates could walk free if they surrendered. Hornigold accepted. Others resisted and paid with their lives. Rogers imposed law, stationed troops, and hanged those who defied him. Nassau's republic crumbled. The dream of a pirate-run state ended in gallows and gunsmoke. Still, their brief rule mattered. Pirate republics showed that power could emerge from the margins, not the centers of empire. They proved that commerce could be taxed without kings, that fear and reputation could be as effective as treaties. And they forced empires to adapt. Convoy systems, stronger navies, and admiralty courts were all sharpened in response to the pirate threat. Yet their legacy is tangled. They disrupted the slave trade, but also sold enslaved people themselves. They preached equality among their crews, but thrived on plunder, blood, and intimidation. Their republics were not utopias. They were fragile experiments born of desperation, greed, and freedom in equal measure. And maybe that's why their story endures. Because in their fleeting rule, pirates held up a mirror to the age, exposing the hypocrisy of empires that condemned piracy while practicing it under new names. For a moment, the men and women with no flag shaped the fate of nations. So when we picture the Jolly Roger snapping in the Caribbean wind, we should remember it was not just a symbol of lawlessness. It was a banner of power, an outlaw's experiment in statecraft, quickly destroyed, but never forgotten. This has been Hidden in History, where shadows still speak. If you enjoyed this journey into the pirate republics, subscribe and stay with us, because the past still hides stories that can change how we see the world today.